America, once he went to South Korea, he found himself now with a travel ban, a ban. He can't leave. Well, we conducted an interview with him today at 10 a.m. Central this morning, as I said. We played it for radio because we want to get this out to as many as we can, and we wanted it on those 75 Christian radio stations. We've already put it out there on social media everywhere because we need as many people as possible to become aware of this. We are very concerned for Mr. Tan. He will tell us in this interview, he has now already been indicted for speaking in America. Free speech in America, indicted in South Korea. They could arrest him at any time. The communists have and are taking over South Korea. We need to get Mr. Tan out. So right now, there is no ambassador for South Korea. Why don't we see the Trump administration? I know they have a lady apparently who is standing in the wings, who has been confirmed by the Senate, but I don't think she's been sworn in. So for my research today, she has not. Why not make him? In fact, I don't know, maybe the ambassador at large of the Office of Global Criminal Justice is still open. But we need him to become an ambassador. Now, one way that can happen is through recess appointments, according to the U.S. Constitution. The House is out. The Senate will be out somewhere around August 7th. We need to have President Trump, I believe, consider appointing him as an ambassador. I will ask him about that in my interview, you'll hear, so that he has the immediate diplomatic protections as an ambassador. Let's have a recess appointment, swear him in over the phone, and get him home. There also are many bases, U.S. military bases and training centers in South Korea. Go look it up. I think there's even some Green Beret over there. How many of you have seen the movie John Wayne, Green Berets, the Green Beret? Yeah, I love that. It's one of my favorite movies. Let me tell you, as I said on the radio today, we needed a lot less Pee Wee Herman and a lot more John Wayne. Not only in our foreign policy, but also in our domestic policy, or we're going to find ourselves in the same situation as South Korea with an illegitimate election. We're going to see that they take our president and they're going to indict him. They're going to impeach him, maybe then indict him. They're going to try to remove him from office, try to throw him in jail. They've already tried this before, which they have done to the former and real president of South Korea. The real president of South Korea is sitting in prison. They've given him at least 1 or 2 life terms. Are you kidding me? We'll get into that with Mr. Morse Tan. So if we can, listen, folks, here's a question. If we can go to Venezuela and scoop up the sitting president, whether he got there by crook or hook or legit or not legit, and that is up for debate by some, probably not legit. But if you can go over to Venezuela and scoop up their president, oh, I know they got him on drug charges or whatever they got him on. But if they went over there and scooped him up, a sovereign nation, and brought him to the U.S., you're telling me that we can't get our man out of South Korea when we have all these special forces and troops sitting there? We can't scoop in and take our guy home, bring him home? You know what? The politicians in Washington, a lot of these guys, they all love coloring inside the lines. Well, again, we need less Pee Wee Herman and more John Wayne right now, I think. Not, again, only in our foreign policy when it comes to South Korea and some of these other nations, but also when it comes to what's going on domestically. If we do not get control of this situation and we have the law on our side, the Constitution on our side, they are going to come into power, the Democratic Socialists of America. And these other commies and Islamists, and they're going to take over the Congress. They're going to take over the courts. They're going to change the laws. You know, Hitler ran around saying, I didn't break any laws. So a lot of the guys that survived after Hitler went away, whether he committed suicide or went to Central America, South America, is up for debate. But the guys that survived and went on trial, Nuremberg, oh, we didn't break any laws. We didn't break any laws. Yeah, that's right, because you guys changed the laws. That doesn't mean you didn't break the moral law. Laws of nature, nature is God. Well, they're going to try that in America if they get the chance. They're going to stack the U.S. Supreme Court. They're going to change the laws, and then they're going to come after us. And a lot of folks are going to be standing around wondering how this happened. Well, again, they can listen now or listen later. I'd rather them listen now so we can save the country and our liberties and freedoms for ourselves and our children and grandchildren, or they can listen later when it's too late. But many people are going to say, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened because we had leaders that many of them don't want to take the action that's necessary under the rule of law and the Constitution to deal with these subversive individuals, these people carrying out the color revolution that's still going on in America. And I'm afraid, as I address in this interview tonight, as we addressed with Doug Frank last night, what's happening in South Korea can and very likely might happen here. But I'm going to go back to my real goal tonight. That is praying for Mr. Morse Tan, but also really, really politely, professionally, kindly, prayerfully asking the White House to get Mr. Tan home. Again, if we can scoop up a sitting president in Venezuela, you're telling me we can't get our guy out of South Korea? And my concern is, now that they've indicted him, and he's going to speak to it, that they might arrest him and then he disappears into their prison system. So again, I need you to tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social. We need as many people here tonight listening as possible. WorldviewTube.com, WorldviewTube.com. All right, now, before we go to that interview, and then I'm going to have on Ed Dowd tonight. Ed Dowd to talk about the private credit time bomb. I did a pre-interview also with Ed Dowd because he's in Hawaii. I think he lives in Hawaii, doesn't he, Logan? And so due to the time change, we had to pre-record with him as well. But let me tell you something, folks. All of this that we're doing costs so much money. I got to bring in around $40,000 a month to keep this network's bills paid. Okay? And there are many ways you can support us. And one of them is by going to worldviewstore.com and ordering up whatever you see there. Freeze-dried food, emergency supplies. And I don't know about you folks, but I have tapped off my prepper plans because I don't know what's coming this fall. I don't know what's going to go on with this Iranian crisis. And if the Iranians shut down another port, now they're going after Saudi Arabia. We could have a major energy crisis here. We already have an inflation crisis. We have a private credit time bomb that's ticking. We have derivatives. We have so many reasons why I think a lot of you should do what I've done, which is I've got about 2 to 3 years worth of freeze-dried food. Now, you maybe don't want that much. Maybe you want 6 months, a year. But I'm telling you, in this dangerous world we live in, you should be going to worldviewstore.com and getting freeze-dried food. And it's real food. It's just freeze-dried. Okay? It's real food. It's very good. It's real food. It's just freeze-dried. Okay? We have sold a few years ago, we sold 3 tractor trailer loads of this in about a 4-week period. 3 tractor trailer loads. 3 tractor trailer loads came in back to back over the course of about a week or 2 weeks because we had so many people ordering. So I know some of you already ordered. The question is, have you, and if you've already ordered, do you really have enough? Because you're generally, when something happens, going to need more than you planned. It's better to have it and throw it away eventually, or donate it and take the write-off. It's got a 25-year shelf life, but maybe at some point you donate it. You're like, I don't really want this. Donate it to Salvation Army or Red Cross or Goodwill or whoever and take the write-off. But you might want to plan for yourself longer and your spouse or your kids, your grandkids, maybe a single mom with kids, a widow, or barter with it. And that's one reason why I have a lot of extra, because I want to barter with it. Because trust me, if we go into an inflationary or a situation or hyperinflation or a just-in-time inventory crisis like we saw under COVID, if we go into something like that, you will be able to barter with this. People will gladly take a bucket of freeze-dried food and come fix the plumbing or electrician or whatever it might be. There is a medium of exchange. That's really been the history of America for a long time, was bartering. So you better get prepared, because I don't know what's coming this fall, but I'm very concerned, as is Dr. Frank and so many others. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. That's a great way to support us. You'll also find the pre-order for my Revelation commentary, 3-volume set on Revelation, shipping this fall. Beautiful hardcover, brown, leather-like looking cover with gold printing on the cover and spine, worldviewstore.com. Now, you know another way you can support us is by belonging to our vault, okay? That's where we have archived 36 years of radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks. All my books are there as PDF. Now, that's a lot of material to search through. I get it. And maybe a lot of you are going like, I don't really need access to 36 years of content. What am I going to do with all that content? You know what? I'm glad you asked. because we felt the same way. That's a lot of content, even for us, to try to get access to and use it when we need it. So we developed, and we spent about $100,000 over the last 12 plus months developing a powerful Bible and worldview software so you can get instant questions answered that you need answered for your Bible study, your personal growth, your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, a friend. But you say, well, I could just go to any search engine. Okay, fine. Go to any search engine and ask them Bible questions. But good luck knowing whether or not you're getting the right answer. And in this day and age, you probably aren't. But you can know it when you belong to our vault, because coming August 1st, we're going to make you a member. If you're a member, you're going to have access to our Worldview and Bible software program. And it is all quarantined on our own servers, quarantined, and is only what we have allowed in our database to answer your questions. So now you get to instantly search our 36-year library. I want to show you a little update. Hello, I'm your Worldview 2 Biblical Worldview Research Assistant. How can I help you today? All right, I'm going to go down here. And I'm going to say, what is transhumanism? Okay, I'm going to ask that question, and let's see what happens. It's searching our massive 36-year radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, and so much. And there's the answer. Transhumanism is a philosophical movement that advocates using science and technology to improve the human condition and guide human evolution. It aims to enhance both physical and cognitive human abilities through new technologies that can improve longevity, cognition, and well-being. It emerged in the 20th century and has roots in the Enlightenment's emphasis on empirical science and critical reasoning. At its core, transhumanism seeks to optimize the human being through technology and technique. This includes merging machines with people, and ultimately culminates in what is called the singularity, a point in human history when scientific advances become unstoppable, potentially leading to the creation of godlike artificial intelligence that surpasses human thinking. That's what they want. Transhumanists also envision humans acquiring heightened capabilities such as editing DNA, engineering immunity to diseases, and aging. Okay? And it goes on from there. Well, where did I get this answer from? Well, I'm glad you asked. I got it from, well, that right there came from an interview with Dr. John Witcher and Brooke Witcher. Here, this came from an interview where I was interviewing Joe Allen, Alex Newman, Tom Renz, and others. Here is where I was interviewing none other than Carl Tykrib. So it gives you all of these places where it came from, and then you can go listen to those shows. What other question should we ask it? What is technocracy? Let's ask that. Now, all of this is at your fingertips, and anybody can use this biblical worldview software by just typing the question and hitting return. Technocracy is the science of social engineering, specifically the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population. It was originally developed as an economic model in 1932 at Columbia University by engineers and scientists who believed they could create a new economic system to replace capitalism and free market enterprise. It means rule by acknowledged, quote, experts, folks. And like, where did all that come from? Citations. Patrick Wood, the premier expert on technocracy and transhumanism. I did a show on COVID passports. So here's another Patrick Wood. So we just asked two very important questions. All right, let's ask it about a Bible verse. Let's see. Let's ask it about Philippians 4:13. That was my favorite verse growing up. Philippians 4:13. But a lot of people use that verse out of context. What is the meaning of Philippians 4:13? Did I spell it right? Let's see. I think I did. See, a lot of people say, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. They use it as kind of a positive thinking mantra. I can do anything. I can slam dunk a basketball. Really? Well, look at that. Many people, particularly athletes and public figures, use it as a motivational saying to suggest they can achieve great personal success, win competitions, or accomplish any goal they set their mind to. However, this is not the intended meaning of the verse. The true meaning of the verse is rooted in its context. The Apostle Paul wrote it while in prison for preaching the gospel. He was enduring severe persecution, and the verse reflects his confidence that he could endure hardship, trials, tribulation, and rejection, not because of his own strength, but through the power of Christ. I can endure all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's about perseverance. Where did this come from? Well, it came from my series on defeating anxiety and fear. So again, if you would like to, what every Christian should know, that's a book I wrote. Twisted Scripture, Twisted Theology. See, you can ask it Bible questions. Now you say, again, I can do this online. Yeah. Go ask this of Grok, Elon Musk's AI, or ask it of Google. That's fine, do that. But good luck getting a biblical answer and knowing you got a biblical answer. You can get an answer, but is it biblical? Or is it just grabbing stuff from off the internet? This is isolated and quarantined, so you have truth. You can trust it because it came from our 36 years of faithful teaching of the Word of God in biblical worldview. You can ask it about history, economics, law, science. So folks, you need to be empowered to answer questions, to give people the answers for why they should believe and trust in the Bible and a biblical worldview and its application to everyday life. And so how do you take advantage of a 36-year library? It's hard for us, and it's our library. That's why we built this, because we want you to be able to instantly get answers without having to dig through 36 years of radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, and commentaries and documentaries. It's a powerful biblical worldview software. You can use it on your phone, your tablet, your computer. But folks, people have questions and they deserve answers, but it has to be biblical, solid truth answers. And that's what we're doing. So again, this is launching. This is launching on August 1st, Worldviewpedia. Again, it will be for Vault members, part of your membership, Worldviewpedia. I picked that name several years ago. I even designed the little logo. You like that? Worldviewpedia, coming August 1st. Please go join the Vault right now, worldviewtube.com/vault, so we can keep pushing out programming like you're going to get tonight with Ed Dowd, an exclusive interview with Ambassador Morse Tan. All right. Hopefully by now you've gone out there, you've tweeted, you've texted, you've emailed, you got everybody here. Get a pen and paper. We'll be giving you out the comment and switchboard number for the White House so we can ask the White House to, which I'm sure they're already aware of this. I'm sure there are already negotiations or something going on, but we need, I think, time is not on our side, in my opinion. And I think you're going to kind of gather that when you hear what Mr. Morse Tan has to say. We need to get him home. So again, watch this interview. I pre-recorded this morning. And then Ed Dowd, I pre-recorded an interview with Ed Dowd on the private credit time bomb. And then Dan Eastman will join us to talk about that as well. Here is my pre-recorded interview from this morning with Mr. Morse Tan. Watch this. Joining me now is the former ambassador to South Korea. He was the ambassador during President Trump's first term. We talked about him last night, showed video of him last night with our dear friend, Dr. Doug Frank. He went over to South Korea to oversee and watch and observe what was going on with the election, and he has not been allowed to leave. I want you to get a pen. I want you to get a piece of paper. I want you to take down the phone number for the White House. We also need you to pray. So we need you to pray and we need you to act. And that's going to begin with a phone number to the White House, respectfully asking for President Trump's administration to intervene and get this dear man and his family out of South Korea. He joins us now. It is very late there in South Korea, a little after 12 a.m. in the morning. He joins us after a very full day. Mr. Morse Tan, thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Tan, we had a, let me do that again, Logan. Let's fix that. What did I say? All right. Mr. Morse Tan, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be with you.
Sir, let's talk about where you are right now, why you cannot leave. Why is the travel ban on you there in South Korea?
Yes, I have been travel banned allegedly for engaging in criminal defamation against the president who was illegitimately placed in that office through election fraud. Based on what I had said at the National Press Club in the United States of America in Washington, D.C., where as a U.S. citizen and former ambassador at large for global criminal justice for President Trump in his first term, I spoke out that it was reported that he had committed certain serious crimes back in his youth. And for saying political speech on U.S. soil, as a U.S. citizen, as a former ambassador to the United States, that is protected speech by the U.S. Constitution. At the core of free speech in our Constitution is political speech. And this is squarely political speech about a political figure. And so it is 100% protected by the U.S. Constitution. South Korea does not have jurisdiction over this. Can you imagine? Then every time somebody said something about President Trump in South Korea and did so as a South Korean citizen on South Korean soil, then I guess if they want the reciprocal thing to happen, then they could be prosecuted in a U.S. court. And I imagine that's probably not what they want, but based on what they are doing to me, that would be the reciprocal action.
And you were born in South Korea, but raised in America, correct?
Yes, I was born in Seoul, South Korea, but I was less than 2 years old when our family immigrated to the U.S.
And the
yes.
the State Department still has you listed on their website as the current ambassador there. Here it is, U.S. State Department, Morse H. Tan, Ambassador at Large, Office of Global Criminal Justice, December 31st, 2019 to present. And is that
yes,
the archive page? Okay.
That would be my guess. I have not attempted to look at it of late, but I served through the end of the first Trump administration.
Okay. So I'm guessing you have your family with you there?
I actually don't. My family is in America.
Okay. For some reason, I thought your wife was there with you.
She is not presently here in Korea.
Okay. I'm guessing you're very thankful for that right now?
Well, you know, it's safer for them at this point. And so they are in the United States.
How are they holding
up? So, you know, it's hard. They miss me. I miss them. And this was not the plan. I was only supposed to be in Korea for 1 week. And so, you know, we did not celebrate our 23rd anniversary together like we have for all our other anniversaries because of this situation. And so I was supposed to be back in America. I do the bulk of the driving and traveling with one of my kids for his soccer, and I wasn't able to do that. One of my children just went off to college. I was supposed to be the one taking him there and was not able to do that either. And so I am someone who is devoted to my family, and I think I have probably done more directly in my family ministry for my family than time spent in professional matters. And so my family is very important to me. And so being away from them over this extended time, what was supposed to be a 1 week trip, is now approaching 2 months. So this is due to a travel ban, a successive travel ban, and yet a third travel ban has been imposed upon me that is supposed to extend to August 15th. On top of that, I was just recently indicted, even though they really don't have a case, that this is jurisdictionally, procedurally, and substantively completely wrong legally. And so that is the situation I find myself in, but this is lawfare. And you have an emerging communist dictatorship here in South Korea, believe it or not. And so, yes, there are now 2 dictators on the Korean Peninsula, one in the north, one in the south. And the basic rights and freedoms are being eliminated here. What was once the Constitutional Republic of Korea is being transformed at a rapid pace to no longer being that. And the election fraud has also put into power all sorts of people who were not chosen by the electorate of South Korea, representatives not voted for by the people. And so the situation actually is very serious here. South Korea is on its last legs before it becomes crushed and it becomes like North Korea. It is moving rapidly in that direction.
You're an attorney and you were on staff at Liberty University, correct?
I was the dean of the Liberty University Law School, and the Lord saw fit to set all sorts of records during my time, positive records during that time.
Well, we have worked, of course, I knew Jerry Falwell and was on his broadcast. He was on mine. I wrote for the Liberty Journal. We toured that campus in the 70s when there was nothing but a couple dorms and a couple buildings. There was hardly anything there. And he came and spoke at my church and Christian school in Northern Virginia when I was very young. And so we know Liberty well. We know many people that have been on staff there. My friend, Dr. Tommy Ice, of course, Matt Staver, Ed Heinzen. So we have a lot of connections to Liberty University. So you taught law there, you know law. This is lawfare, you say. And of course, this seems as though this is the same thing going on in America over elections and lawfare. So it seems like this is the global plan of communist or globalist or elitist to use elections and election fraud, and then to take people's words of free speech and turn them into a way to criminalize them. Now, we have this regime here. You're talking about communism and North Korea, and I want to touch on North Korea in a minute, but how is it they have not actually incarcerated you? How is it you're able to be here? And are you concerned that that could be coming?
So since it's been turned over to the prosecutors from the police, they could seek an arrest warrant at any time. They could also seek to incarcerate me. So that is something that they are able to do at this stage of the matter. And so this has been a dangerous escalation that they have done. I do think that the U.S. government being aware of what is going on is probably a deterrent for them to take those additional steps. But within the Korean legal system, those are steps that can be taken at this stage.
We have a tweet by Gordon Chang from the 20th of July. He says, North Korea is making preparations for an attack on South Korea. There is no other reason why the North would build this road right up to the border. What do you know about that? And how does that play into your situation with so many young people in the streets? We've seen the videos with Dr. Doug Frank, your friend, who is how we came to make contact. How much is North Korea's movement based on any attempt to suppress the young people in the streets? Is this basically a backup on the verge of coming for the communist leaders in South Korea?
Well, it has been the long-standing, overarching goal of North Korea to forcibly take over South Korea by force. That's what the Korean War has been all about. And while the shooting of the all-out war stopped in 1953, the U.S. And South Korea and the UN Central Command are still formally at war with North Korea. North Korea has destroyed the armistice agreement by breaking it so many times that it's no longer in force. And so when you have a regime in South Korea that is aligned with North Korea and is aligned with the Chinese Communist Party, they want to shut the people down. They are eliminating free speech. They are eliminating freedom of expression. They are trampling upon the free exercise of religion. There have been unprecedented raids on Christian churches. Christian pastors have been jailed. They have also been shutting down Christian schools. This is all happening in South Korea. And when you consider that this is a North Korea and CCP-aligned government that is now in place, and they are slamming their foot on the accelerator to communize the country, because communist doctrine says you do a long march through the institutions, and that's been that. There's been that in Korea, whether in the media or in education or in the labor unions or in various parts of society. But they have made so many advances now, and they now control every branch of government. They now see the finish line in sight. So that's why they have slammed on the accelerator to try to get to that finish line of communizing South Korea. And it is critical that our people in America and in our government recognize this and step up to the plate, because we cannot afford to lose our arguably best ally in the world, South Korea, in this manner.
Well, you answered the question, and that was really what I was going to hone in on, and that is, does the current leadership of South Korea invite this movement that Gordon Chang's referring to? And it seems like they do. So this is basically help and backup coming to make sure they can intimidate and, if necessary, move in and suppress the patriots of South Korea wanting to have freedom and liberty, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Look, they have destroyed the Counterintelligence Defense Command. They have eliminated the drone command of South Korea. They have welcomed and invited all these spies and agents and operatives from North Korea and from the Chinese Communist Party. And so South Korea is currently flooded with such agents and spies and operatives. And this regime is encouraging it. They are not against it. They are not going after these spies. They are putting out the welcome mat for them. And so this is what is happening right now in South Korea. The Chinese Communist Party actually thinks they've already prevailed in communizing South Korea. They believe they've already won through the hybrid unrestricted warfare in all sorts of ways, which, if you know the CCP, they telegraph their punches. And so they've already publicly announced the 24 ways that they engage in hybrid unrestricted warfare publicly. And that's what they're doing here in South Korea. And Wang Huning, who is the mastermind of election fraud around the world, recently went to North Korea. Xi Jinping went to North Korea. And there are these visible war preparations that North Korea is doing, not only the road that Gordon mentioned, also the laying of barbed wire, the installing of anti-tank barriers, the putting in of landmines, the digging of tunnels. All these things are happening that are part of North Korea's war preparations. And so we better not be asleep at the wheel here, because the danger is grave and it is going on right now, and the situation must be dealt with. Otherwise, the imminent threats can potentially destroy South Korea.
Frank Gaffney, who has been a guest on this program, he is writing about the president that really lost China. And I guess that would be Harry Truman, correct?
Yes.
So the question is, will it be on the watch of the second administration of the Trump team that loses South Korea?
You know what? I don't think so, because I think Secretary Rubio is increasingly knowing what the situation is here, and his family came from communist Cuba, and I don't think he will allow that. President Trump and Secretary Rubio have both been denouncing communism very vociferously and very clearly, and are doing a magnificent job of doing that. And I think that the time for addressing Northeast Asia, including the Korean Peninsula, is coming. If you look at President Trump's social media, he put out a picture not long ago of his meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore. That, I don't think, is just something he flashed out there in a lark. He also noted on August 25th, just hours before meeting the fake South Korean president for the first time, he put in all caps, "What is going on in South Korea? It looks like a revolution or purge." And actually, he got it right, more right than he might have thought, because it's a revolution and a purge. Both things are happening. And so he asked Lee Jae-myung at that time, or actually a media person asked, and he had Lee Jae-myung answer about why did the Lee Jae-myung appointed special prosecutor invade the command and control center of the Osan Air Base, the largest joint air base in South Korea. And Lee Jae-myung lied through his teeth and said, oh, we got permission from the American military. President Trump followed up by asking his military leadership, did you get permission? Did Lee Jae-myung seek permission from you, and did you grant it? And they all said, no, sir, we did not. And so now South Koreans are barred from entering Osan Air Base. And so when Marco Rubio set up this anti-leftist extremism and violence conference, he invited leaders from 60-some countries, and conspicuously absent from that leadership was leadership from South Korea. And so I think there is more and more awareness of what is going on. The current regime in South Korea not helping us with Iran. This is literally the first time that South Korea has not stood side by side and shoulder to shoulder with us in a war that the United States has fought since the Korean War. Prior to this, every single one, South Korea was fighting together with the US military in every war that the US fought, until this joker in South Korea failing to aid us in our war in Iran. And not only that, he's sending money to the Iranians, actually. And he's also accusing the Israeli military of committing a Holocaust, which is outrageous. And so that is who we have right now in the Blue House, which is the equivalent of the White House in South Korea. And he calls US forces in South Korea occupying forces. He congratulated the president of Vietnam for resisting foreign forces and prevailing, referring to the Vietnam War. Pray tell, whose military is he referring to? Those include the United States military and the South Korean military, for crying out loud. The guy is saying that even though he is supposedly the South Korean president, which is outrageous. And when it comes to intervening on behalf of Taiwan, he says, what would a cross-strait invasion by the Chinese Communist Party have to do with us? It takes time for the US to mobilize, and it would take time for the US to mobilize to a cross-strait invasion by the Chinese Communist Party into Taiwan. And it would be critical for South Korea and Japan and the Philippines to step up, and as the US is mobilizing, to defend Taiwan and to fight against CCP aggression. And yet this person in the White House who is pretending to be the president is pro-CCP, pro-North Korea, anti-American, believe it or not. He's even anti the South Korean people. And he is arguably committing treason. He has committed bribery, that he has sent money to North Korea in the form of a bribe. And he needs to resign. But if he doesn't resign, he needs to be impeached or removed. And if that doesn't happen, then the US should come in through the UN Central Command, declare martial law, and clean house here.
I understand, Mr. Tan, that I think Congress is going on recess today, July 24th, 2026. I believe they've gone on recess or about to go on recess. I'm not an attorney, but I'm just sitting here in my mind thinking, how can we get you out of this situation? You are an attorney. If Congress goes into a recess, could you not be appointed the ambassador again? And at that point, would you not have certain diplomatic rights, protections?
Yes. Ambassadors have diplomatic immunity. And so that would help. And so I am open to serving again in the Trump administration, as I served in the first Trump administration. And so it's also noticeable that none of the three special envoy positions, these are ambassadorial level positions, relating to North Korea have even a nomination yet. So that is noticeably that has not happened yet. The position that I served in during the first Trump administration, that has not been filled yet either. So there are various ways I could potentially serve, and I would be open to doing so. And that would be a wonderful move if I could be nominated along these lines. And then I would have to presumably go back to the United States for my confirmation hearing and such. And so those would be very compelling reasons for me to not be forced to stay here in South Korea and to be able to go back home to the United States.
Yes, but again, forgive me, I'm not an attorney. Could you be appointed now without hearings if Congress goes into recess? Could he do a recess appointment and make you the ambassador today?
That is possible. Recess appointments are possible.
That's what what we need.
So, yes.
That's what we need right now, because we don't have time for hearings. We need you to be appointed, be the ambassador, get the protections, and come home. So here's what I'm going to do, okay? Guys, I'm about to put on the screen here the phone number for the White House. Here you go. Be respectful, be professional, and simply ask for the White House to become aware that the American people are increasingly aware and now very concerned for Mr. Morse Tan, the former ambassador at large to South Korea, that we would like to see, with Congress going into recess for the summer, we would like to see the American people a recess appointment, making him the ambassador immediately to South Korea. There are the comments line, 202-456-1111. That's the comment line, 202-456-1111. The switchboard line is 202-456-1414. My guess is if you call that, they're just going to switch you to the comment line. So you might want to just start with the comment line, which again is 202-456-1111. If for some reason that fills up, I have no idea how many slots they have on their voicemail. You could go to the switchboard then and leave your comment there, 202-456-1414. In our remaining moments, Mr. Tan, let's talk about a little bit about the church in South Korea, your faith. You and I just spoke very briefly before we started rolling here. You are a strong believer. You were at one time interested in maybe being an apologist, studying apologetics and teaching apologetics and biblical worldview. So you're right in our wheelhouse here at Worldview Radio, Worldview Weekend. How is your faith holding you up, number one? And you said you just came from speaking at a church. I mentioned on our networks yesterday, I'm very concerned about all the people in South Korea anytime communism comes to take over a country. But I always know historically that Christians, the church, ecclesia, called out ones, are a real target. And yet they're being very vocal, unlike many of the churches in America that seem to be very sleepy still, particularly down here in the Bible Belt, where I like to say what Norm Geisler used to joke. The problem with the Bible Belt is we don't have enough Bible under our belt. We've had it so comfortable here in the South, the Bible Belt, for so long. You go to places like Oregon, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, the church is way more awake. We could go in there and hold conferences for years and pack them in. Go to the Bible Belt, it's a little more sleepy. So I know the church in South Korea is not asleep. They are wide awake, but because they're wide awake and their pastors are speaking and they're turning out in the streets, this makes them a bigger target. Speak to these issues, your faith, and then the church in South Korea, where I know you came just from being at a church service tonight.
Yeah. So there is nothing that is more important to me than my walk with the Lord Jesus Christ. I've been a follower of Jesus Christ, a Christian, an evangelical Christian since the age of 4. And that is my first identity. And second is not even close. And so that is who I am. I was steeped in studying things like apologetics and systematic theology. I was a biblical and theological studies major at a Christian college. I also did a master's that focused on educational ministries and missions, intercultural studies, evangelism. And so I've done actually a lot of preaching at a lot of churches. And that's true in the United States as well as in South Korea. And so I love preaching. That is something that I love to do. I love teaching as well. And so God has wired me that way, called me that way. And so I've been preaching and teaching in all sorts of contexts, whether in Christian universities or in churches. So that is where I come from, and that's who I am. So here in South Korea, 6 out of the 10 largest churches in the world are here in South Korea. And you have, I think, people increasingly waking up. So you're having worship and prayer at the Olympic Park where they are protesting their stolen elections. And you have, I think, more and more Christians waking up to what is going on. Communism is fundamentally at odds with Christianity because it is anti-God, and it has been anti-Christ, and it has murdered millions upon millions of people and many Christians in that mix, and that it has been the most murderous ideology in human history. And so when you are talking about the communization of a country like South Korea, and by the way, in the United States, communism reportedly recently was deemed at an all-time high in popularity in the United States of America. And so this is a fight that is going on in the United States as it is in South Korea. And the fervency of prayer, the worship and praise, the mission-mindedness. The US and South Korea are the top 2 missionary sending countries in the world. And so this has tremendous implications for reaching the world, completing the Great Commission, reaching the unreached people groups, especially in the 1040 window. And so the implications for all of this are very large. And so the kingdom of God implications here are actually legion.
Indeed, they are. And many of these pastors that are being so vocal right now, they obviously, if this communist revolution is successful, many of them are likely to find themselves being prosecuted and put in prison right now. And yet I'm sure most of them know that on their heart and mind. They know that, right?
That's already happening. And so, yeah, and in North Korea, believe it or not, Pyongyang was once the center of Christianity for all of Asia. It was dubbed the Jerusalem of the East. There was a massive revival in 1907 centered in Pyongyang. And Pyongyang is now the center of the most repressive, oppressive, unjust communist dictatorship, bar none in the world, the worst persecutor of Christians in the world. Pastors were automatically murdered and martyred in North Korea. And so were other church leaders like elders. And those who were church members were given an opportunity to renounce their faith in Jesus Christ. And so many did not. They really fulfilled what it says in the book of Revelation about how through the word of their testimony and through the blood of the Lamb and loving not their lives even unto death, they sealed their testimony with their own blood. And so there have been so many Christian martyrs here in Korea, especially in North Korea. And this is very serious what is happening. Even American missionaries, 6 of them who were sending Bibles and needed materials over to North Korea, were arrested and thrown in jail here in South Korea for doing so. And so there are a number of people in Congress who are angry about that. And so this is, believe it or not, these sorts of things are happening in South Korea.
And this has all happened since the illegitimate election, correct?
Yes.
So we're talking just in a matter of a few months, this is all unfolded.
So the fake illegitimate president was installed last June 3rd in 2025. And there was an additional election on June 3rd of 2026. And if this illegitimate, fraudulent election is allowed to stand, there will be such a supermajority in the National Assembly that they will be able to make constitutional amendments at will. And they have already signaled what sort of amendments they want to make. And it is the sort of amendments that will change the fundamental nature of South Korea to move in an extreme socialist and communist direction.
And what is the timetable on that, sir?
Well, we are fighting the election fraud. And so just recently, the electronic cheating was uncovered by a group of prosecutors and police in Korea. This is the first time that's happened as they've been able to access the server, the electronic server. And this confirms what those of us who have been investigating this already knew, but now this has been made official based on actually investigating the servers themselves. And so this is huge, groundbreaking news. And so the cry of the people is that there has been election fraud, there needs to be a redo of the election, that it needs to be same-day voting, that it needs to be hand-counted. There's no need for electronic voting. The people can count ballots quite easily and just fine. Thank you very much.
And we need that here in America. We need that here in America as well. But the time frame for
around
changing,
the world.
And around the world. The time frame for changing the laws, though, how quickly can they move on this? Is it going to be a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day? Is it going to take them a year? How quick can they move on these massive, what sound like constitutional changes there in South Korea?
They've been doing it apace already. Get this. They passed a law that says the president, the Blue House, the executive branch, can override any judgment that the Constitutional Court or the Supreme Court or any court decides by saying, oh, you got it wrong on the law. We're going to stick the police on you now, and we're going to overrule you. That is no longer rule of law. This is then dictatorship. And so with the media platform law that just came into force on July 7th of literally this month, they can go after anyone for what we would deem in the United States vague standards that nobody can really define, and basically say, oh, you said such and such against Lee Jae-myung, well, we're prosecuting you and we're going to throw you in jail. They have the full panoply of legal weapons, lawfare, to be able to do such things. And so this has already been happening, again, at a breakneck pace over the past year, and it is continuing on. And so there needs this tyrant in South Korea needs to be removed if he doesn't resign. And the people, the representatives that the people chose need to be put in place. The rightful duly elected president needs to come out of jail, and with the life sentence and multiple sentences on top of that have been piled on top of him, that he supposedly committed insurrection when he was the president of the country, makes no sense at all. That, and even in terms of the insurrection legal requirements, there had to be some sort of riot. There was zero rioting. And so this is completely illegitimate for him to be in jail, for his top leadership to be in jail, for his top military leadership to be in jail. This would be like if President Trump were to be thrown in jail together with Rubio, Hegseth, and the cabinet and top military leadership, and for a communist to be in the White House, for communists to make up a supermajority of our Congress and the majority of our judges as well, while the countries closest to us would be seeking to be turning us into a communist state with internal elements cooperating with them. That would be the analogy in terms of what is happening in South Korea.
And isn't that, sir, in closing, the warning to America? With the rise of the Democratic Socialists of America, with the talk of packing the Supreme Court, with the possible losses in the midterm coming up, impeaching President Trump, who knows what could happen? I mean, I'm thinking as I watch this, what's happening in South Korea, this Americans and this administration, if they don't already, need to have their eyes and understanding that those same actors in South Korea and North Korea, and being, of course, orchestrated largely in part by the CCP, those same actors are alive and active and penetrating all levels of our government here, including we just had a report by Secretary Rubio that Cuba is greatly influencing American politics and has penetrated at the highest levels of our government. So what you're describing as a theory, as a scenario, could actually become a reality, unlike the American people could probably comprehend.
Yes. So that's why it's critical for the Save America Act to be passed by the U.S. Senate. Our House has narrowly passed it. President Trump is exactly right that must be passed. the midterms are crucial as well. Because if the midterms are stolen in the United States and President Trump is impeached and, God forbid, removed from office, then look at all the lawfare that they committed against President Trump during the Biden administration, and all what happened on January 6th, what happened to Tina Peters. These are all things that we should wake up and smell the coffee and say, no way, not in this country. We will not allow America to be communized, and we need to put our foot down, and we need to wake up and rise up in America and fight this, because now you have coming out in the midterms all these communist, Mamdani-like candidates. And this must be blocked by election integrity and by the votes of the American people to make sure that no one with that sort of ideology is allowed into our government.
Sir, we want to stay connected with you by text. Anytime you want to come on here, you have access to our network, the 75 Christian radio stations we're on. We're going to be airing this today at 1 o'clock Central on those 75 stations. We're going to air it prime time tonight on our network. We're going to run this throughout the weekend. We're going to stay on this, and we are asking people, please stop what you're doing right now. Call the White House. Be professional, be polite, respectfully ask President Trump to appoint Mr. Morse H. Tan ambassador during the summer recess of Congress. Make a recess appointment. Make him the ambassador again, which of course brings all the legal protections that come with that office. We need you to call now. Comment line 202-456-1111, 202-456-1111. If the voicemail fills up there, the switchboard number for the White House is 202-456-1414, 202-456-1414. Again, be professional, be kind, be courteous to the operators, leave your message accordingly to what we've been talking about on the broadcast. And then pray for Mr. Tan, pray for God's protection of him, that he stays out of jail, that they do not seek to come and arrest him, that they do continue to allow him to stay out and be free. Pray for his family that's here in the States waiting for him. Pray for all of South Korea. Pray particularly for the Christians and the pastors who are filling the streets and speaking up and speaking out. These are our brothers and sisters in Christ. But even if they're not believers, we care about people. We love people, and we don't want to see them under the tyranny of communism. Thank you again for making the time. You are so brave. I mean, here you are sitting in this situation, and I was not expecting you to be this blunt tonight about the current administration, the illegitimate president. I mean, you have a lot of courage. And of course, I can only believe that comes from a very strong faith.
There is no other source because the joy of the Lord is my strength. He gives me the peace that passes understanding. And he's also given me a keen sense of justice. And so if I were to not speak out, it would be, as Jeremiah said, like fire shut up in my bones. And so I'm doing this out of a sense of his calling and out of a sense of obedience to him.
Well, Lord bless you. I know our audience and listening friends are inspired by your strength, your testimony. You're not just saying it, you're living it out. And we believe in prayer. We believe that the prayers of the righteous availeth much. And so please know, this is going out to millions of people, and so many people are praying for you, your family, and the folks of South Korea. And let's not make this just one interview. Let's keep on this. We'll follow up. And again, thank you for making time for us. I know it's going on about 1:45 in the morning there. So thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I do believe that the Lord has sustained me through the prayers of his people. And so I am grateful for all the intercession that's being lifted up.
We'll talk soon, sir. Thank you.
All right. God bless you. Thank you.
Mr. Morse H. Tan checking in tonight. And folks, I cannot stress enough the need for you to spread this interview far and wide. We're going to post it on all of our socials. We're going to cut it up into clips. We need this to go absolutely viral. We need people respectfully, professionally, graciously calling the White House. We need you praying. We need you to alerting all of your prayer teams that you have in your community, your churches, your homeschool groups, your Christian schools, college students, university Christian students, even the students who maybe go to secular schools, but you're tied in with Bible studies and churches. We need everyone praying, and we need everyone calling. And let's see that if we can see a resolution to this very quickly. And wouldn't you love to see a man like that back in the administration? What a strong testimony. I mean, I didn't know tonight about this morning, it's nighttime over there. I didn't know about his love of apologetics, his love of Bible teaching, his biblical training, his love of preaching. Again, folks, we need the phones to ring, and you can call 24/7. Comment line 202-456-1111, 202-456-1111, switchboard 202-456-1414 if the comment line fills up, 202-456-1414. And again, we are going to stay on this story and continue to bring you follow-ups. And thank you to Dr. Doug Frank for putting us together with Mr. Tan. We'll be right back after this short break.
No signal, no service, no way to reach the people you love. When disaster strikes, hurricanes, wildfires, grid failures, civil unrest, the first thing to go is communication. Cell towers fail, networks crash, and suddenly, you're cut off. Not anymore. Worldview Talk brings you military-grade satellite phones that work anywhere on Earth. Mountaintops, deep wilderness, disaster zones, no cell tower required. When everyone else goes silent, you stay connected. And that's just the beginning. At worldviewtalk.com, you'll find everything you need to protect what matters most. Solar generators, silent, clean power when the grid goes down, bulletproof backpacks, everyday protection for your kids, your commute, your peace of mind. Faraday bags shield your devices from EMPs, hackers, and tracking. This isn't paranoia, it's preparation. And in today's world, it's smart. Visit worldviewtalk.com. That's worldviewtalk.com. Don't wait until the lights go out. Worldview Talk. Stay connected, stay protected, stay ready.
Joining me now is Ed Dowd. We always enjoy our conversations. And even though he comes on the program every few months, let me tell you something, I'm following what he does every day that I can find him being interviewed by somebody else. Because this guy has his finger on the pulse of what's happening. The other night I watched a fascinating interview where he was talking about the private credit time bomb. And as you guys know, I made some graphs, some charts, some very easy to understand graphics, because this is perhaps for some a very complex issue, but it doesn't need to be such. And it, well, needs to be something many of you in my audience, particularly since my demographic is largely made up of 55 years of age and older, because your 401k, your retirement, your pension may be at great risk. Something Ed Dowd says when you compare it to what's coming, and 2008 will be a walk through the park. Well, as you guys know, we like to project trends, predict trends, and that comes with interviewing experts and listening early. I don't give financial advice, I give financial opinion. But my opinion tonight is you better be paying attention, because I think a lot of people are going to get wiped out. So let's learn from Ed Dowd tonight. Ed, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Brandon, great to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
You bet. I'm tracking with you, searching your name on YouTube and other outlets, Twitter, X, whatever you call it today, trying to find everything you're saying and doing and putting out. Because you're one of the few people with this long track record, and you're warning about this private credit time bomb that's coming. And I see articles, Wall Street Journal, some of the different articles I see. But this is not, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this has permeated mainstream corporate media or mainstream thinking of Americans yet. Is that true? And when do you think it'll get on their radar?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's kind of a wonky finance topic at the moment. So people in finance know about it, but the general public does not. So I recently, about 3 weeks ago, started a new Substack called Ed Dowd Beyond the Narrative. And I did put out a piece on the private credit market last week. It's called Private Credit, the New Junk Bond Market, except it's less transparent, and less liquid. So a little history lesson. The private credit market started from the ashes of the great financial crisis. And it started, like all niche finance verticals start, it had a purpose. It picked up the slack from the commercial banks that were regulated out of making very risky loans that they had made before. So the category started out small, and it was targeting companies between 10 million and $1 billion in revenues. But then the category became quite lucrative. It's got fees of 3 to 4%. So Wall Street got into gear, and there were a lot of copycats and a lot of funds and a lot of money raised. And then eventually, like any category, it starts chasing bad deals. And the biggest concern I have is it's a murky part of the credit markets where there's not a lot of transparency, and the people that issue these loans mark their own books. Whereas the junk bond market, at least the junk bond market's traded publicly, so you can know how the specific bond was doing. So this market has grown to, the estimates are $2.5 to $3 trillion now. And the last 2 years, 24 and 25, and now half of 26, the explosion in the credit market, the private credit markets, has been quite dramatic. It's grown 50 to 75% in the last 2.5 years. And a lot of those deals probably, are not great. And what happened in the fourth quarter of 2025 is we started to see some bankruptcies. And so the market kind of started to freeze a little bit, and it's effectively frozen at the moment. People have been wanting their money back. The problem is there's something called gates. So when people got into these funds, they should have known, or they did know, that if there were too many redemption requests at once, the private credit funds could gate the redemptions and give you only a portion of your money. I've heard stories where people have asked for their money back and gotten 8 cents on the dollar of their money back. So they're trapped in these funds, and so we don't have any more inflows, and we got withdrawals. So this $2.5 trillion marginal driver of credit is frozen at the moment. And these types of scenarios need constant flows to kind of paper over the losses. So the losses are accumulating. The credit market's frozen at the moment, effectively frozen. And people should know this. The last 2 years of credit creation from the commercial banks was to these guys. So the commercial banks lent to private credit and private equity, and that was the marginal creation of credit in the economy. That's now effectively frozen. And this kind of feeds into AA, because a lot of the big AI, not AA, AI. The AI financing needs about 50% of the external financing for the AI CapEx build was predicted to be coming from private credit. So now that looks less likely. And I've seen this movie before. The credit markets start to, they always shut down the party in these investment booms. In 2007, the credit markets were already starting to revolt. The bond guys at BlackRock, I was at BlackRock at the time, were freaking out. The equity folks partied on until December of 2007, but the cracks had started in 2007, well before that. And it feels to me like that's what's going on now. The bond guys, the fixed income investors are starting to choke on this paper. They're starting to question whether they should continue to finance what's going on in the economy in this market specifically. And we're recently seeing reports from Goldman Sachs credit desk that fixed income investors are starting to say no mas. So this is how it begins. It begins in the credit markets, and eventually the equity markets wake up. So that's why the mainstream media is not all over, because the stock market's not that far off all-time highs. People are very complacent, but it's begun, and the clock is ticking.
So the people that are watching this broadcast, listening to you, following you at Ed Dowd Beyond the Narrative.substack.com, these people have the chance to perhaps save their life saving, particularly if they're older and don't have the time to wait for the market to come back. So this could mean for some of them saving what, 30, 40, 50% of their nest egg?
Yeah, correct. And look, if you're in retirement age, you shouldn't be 80% equities. And a lot of people are 80% equities above 60. And, it's been a phenomenal bull market run that kicked the Biden administration really kind of kicked the can down the road when they let 20 million people into the country and gave them we estimated every illegal immigrant got $60,000 worth of rent, shelter, food, and what have you. And that was why we had the deficits we had during peacetime under Biden. They spent about $1.5 trillion of our money to get these people in here, and that floated the economy an extra couple of years. And so the real economy has been struggling. The only thing that's been really driving the economy and the stock market has been AI, and that's all been driven by private credit. So the party's starting to end. It's getting close to closing time, but the equity markets will be the last ones to figure this out. And the concentration of the equity markets is something I haven't seen since the dot-com days. 45% of the S&P 500 market cap is AI or AI adjacent. And in the last couple of months, the semiconductor industry has become 20% of the S&P 500 due to the AI bubble. That's a notoriously cyclical sector. It had a similar, not quite as high as this, but in the dot-com days, its percentage of the S&P, I think, was around 12%, and that ended poorly. The boom and bust cycle of the semiconductor industry has never been thwarted. So people who think semiconductors are secular growth companies are going to find out pretty fast that that's not the case. And a lot of the semiconductor chips that they've sold have been fueled by debt, the debt to these AI frontier labs that don't make any money yet. So the whole system, the fixed income folks are starting to question the return on investment, and that's how it begins.
But Wall Street loves it, I think I heard you say, because they're making 3 or 4% up front.
Well, the private credit markets are making 3 to 4%. The Wall Street banks make money issuing debt and equity. So they're not going to tell you things are bad until after the fact, and they'll downgrade all these stocks once they're down 30, 40, 50%.
And how about the average financial planner out there? So if our audience is listening tonight, Friday night, they call their financial planner over the weekend or on Monday. How much is their typical financial planner going to know about what we're discussing right now?
Well, they should know, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them, look, they've been, for the most part, they've been right. You just stay in the market. Don't sweat the small stuff. But we get these moments in time where the cycle bears down, and we have not only an AI bubble, we have a housing problem, and we have something going on in China that's going to affect the rest of the globe. So there's a global growth scare coming, and it all starts in the credit markets. And I suspect not all financial advisors are bad, but there are some bad eggs out there that it directly received nice commissions if they put you into private credit funds. But a lot, if you have $300,000 or $400,000 with a financial planner, you're probably not a high net worth individual, so they didn't put you in. But if you're a high net worth individual, you might want to call your financial advisor and say, hey, have you put me in a private credit fund, and why am I there?
Wow. Let's go to some graphics we made based on some of the stuff you've been writing about and saying. So you got the private credit time bomb. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Here's how we did it. Private credit firms, they raise the capital from investors. They make loans to middle market companies, real estate and other assets. And then they sell the assets to insurance companies and investments and retirement accounts. And as you've already noted, the problem is the lack of liquidity, little transparency or oversight. And the valuations are based on models, not market prices. And defaults will surge when the economy weakens. We got that right?
You got that right. And the defaults are already starting to rise. And, I'm not the only one saying this. People that manage a tremendous amount of money have already called this PIMCO, which is a very well-respected fixed income shop. They run retail money and institutional money. They're right behind BlackRock. They're a bond shop. Their CIO came out and said that we're in the beginning stages of the credit default cycle, and losses are going to be greater than expected. So, it's not just Ed Dowd in a dark corner saying this. There are people on Wall Street who are starting to raise the warning signals. And even Goldman Sachs this week said their credit desk, who they talked to customers, they said the customers are starting to get nervous. So that's how it begins. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen overnight, but there'll be a magical day when the stock market starts to figure this out. Timing is unclear, but we're close to closing time, and this is a good time to raise some cash in your portfolio or reallocate from equity to bonds if you're a retired person with with 80% of your holdings in equities. You might just want to go into some bonds or cash or something like that.
Or gold.
Or gold. 5 to 10% of your portfolio should be gold.
Mm-hmm. Let me
Not
show
more
you,
than that, though.
Not more than that. Let me show you another chart. Does this sound right to you? Private credit's redemption squeeze. So folks start asking for their money back, and they cap it at 5%. And I guess people didn't read the small print. And now you're saying more and more people are getting nervous. They call. This isn't something you can get out of liquid very fast. And so because of the small print, apparently, they can just give you a little bit. And then, of course, if there starts to become bigger problems, how do these people get their money out before it all collapses? So this is, of course, different reports we've received from Financial Times, Barron's, The Guardian, Yahoo Finance. This square with what you're reading?
Yeah, and so it's all about the flows. So what started off in the fourth quarter were redemption requests. They spilled into Q1, and then the gates got thrown up. And then in Q2, we got reports that redemption requests have accelerated at every one of these private credit funds, the big ones, Apollo, Blackstone, BlackRock, et cetera, Cliffwater, Blue Owl. So the flows are not coming in, and the redemption requests are accelerating. So the music is stopping, and there's a lot of we don't know how bad the losses will be. There's two questions: how bad will the losses be, and what will recovery rates look like? And a little unknown fact is the commercial banks who loan to these guys, they give them credit lines and subscription lines and provide them liquidity. They are first in line should the defaults really pick up. The last in line are the investors.
The last in line are mom and pop.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So tell me how this unwinds. Is it going to unwind for the year is over? Is it going to be next year? And is there a trigger? Is it more increase in war in the Middle East? We now have Saudi Arabia coming under attack. There's, of course, talk of shutting down more trade routes. We're declining in our reserves here in oil. I'm reading that a lot of the refineries are running at 96%, 100%. We have some refineries that have gone out of business. We have some refineries that have shut down for maintenance. So others are not shutting down for maintenance because they're trying to keep going. Is it going to be an energy crisis? Is it going to be more war? What is the trigger? Is it derivatives? Does derivatives kick off this private credit time bomb, or does the private credit time bomb kick off derivatives? Explain in layman terms how this whole thing could come down.
What people need to understand is that credit always ends the party, and credit is questioning things. And so then feedback loops begin. So with private credit effectively frozen or stalled, that then has knock-on effects to the rest of the credit market. So banks are less willing to make commercial and industrial loans. They're less willing to lend to consumers. So there starts to become a credit contraction, and there's a feedback loop. The problem with the oil shock is this only accelerates everything we were saying. We had a thesis that we're going in a global growth recession. Then you throw in the oil war shock. That only brings it forward. We were happy to see President Trump and the MOU come out, and oil went back down to around $68. Recently, though, the MOU looks like it's been torn up, and oil's back around $80, $82 on WTI. If oil goes back up, that could be the trigger. And I want to remind people, in 2008, oil had a mini price shock without any war. It was just speculative frenzy. Oil went from something like $70 and to $140 in 6 months, and it peaked in June of 2008, and then that just killed the consumer, and then everything fell apart in the second half of 2008. So we have a situation here where we've already had a mini oil price shock. It did temper consumer spending. We saw that in the consumer credit that was issued in May. It actually went negative for the first time in a while. So we were hoping. Look, we think we're going to get a recession regardless, but we don't want an oil price shock. It only makes it deeper, harder, and faster. So, what's going to cause this to start affecting the equity markets in earnest? Not sure, but again, we're closer to closing time than we are the beginning of the party. And the credit markets are always the part where it ends, and they're questioning things right now. Now, there is an attempt on Wall Street to keep the party going. What they want to do to raise liquidity is insurance companies are putting insurance wrappers around some of these loans so they can sell them to, repackage some of these loans that they already have to get liquidity and sell them to other people and get a AA rating because an insurance company gives us a wrapper. It's like credit default swaps, like AIG. It's a similar type of thing. So they could try to kick this party down the road a little longer, but I don't think it's going to work. I think people are nervous, and I don't think the party's going to continue much longer.
And midterms, and we're reading some data here from some of our experts telling us that President Trump will lose the midterms, maybe 30 seats or more. What do you see happening midterm if he loses? How does that impact the economy, investors, the sentiment for continuing to invest, particularly when you got Democrat Socialists of America running around talking about confiscation of private property and et cetera?
Yeah, we already saw that from Mondami yesterday. He put out an X post gleefully saying to people with properties of greater than 5 million in value in New York City to go check their mail because there's a new tax coming on their property if they don't live there as a permanent resident, if it's a second home. So we're already seeing the confiscation socialists, gleefully talking about this. Look, this midterm is very important. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has gone sideways on some issues, and he's lost the youth of America. So I don't want to see the Republicans lose, but it's looking that way. But what I do know is the administration is going to try to do everything it can to continue to keep the AI bubble afloat. They're going to try to, ram through some stuff to keep it going. It may or may not work. So the bubble may burst after the midterms, before the midterms maybe. But what's going to happen in the fall is going to be very, very uncertain and risky. And then we also have the Iran war, which could really escalate. And if oil gets above $100 on WTI, because there's also the Brent crude, I watch WTI. If it gets above 100 or 125, 200 is next on the levels I'm looking at, and that would be devastating to Trump in the midterms, and he'll have even more severe losses. So this is a very uncertain time. The markets are very complacent, and the credit markets are telling you things are getting a little spicy.
I want to go back to the derivatives and the private credit time bomb. Which one do you think is the biggest issue, and does one trigger the other?
Yes, this is the difficult part. The feedback loops. It's all reflexive. So what I believe is going to end the party is the private credit markets being frozen, and then that will cause the money flow to the AI complex to slow, and then one of these companies will have a fundamental miss on their earnings, and then people will start to question the whole trade.
Let's talk about an event in the U.S. We have some guys. There's a professor out of Chicago that I watched an interview with him the other day, and he's saying that one of the big threats is if Trump decides to put boots on the ground in Iran. And he says, up till now, that hasn't triggered terror cells. But if you put troops on the ground in Iran, that could very well trigger terror cells in the U.S. All of this could hum along maybe longer. But what is a major high casualty event in the U.S. or Europe?
That would be terribly tragic. It's definitely a non-zero percentage chance it could happen. I mean, I don't know if people remember, but a lot of these terror cells kind of snuck in here under Obama. I remember that quite well, that there was a lot of terror cells getting in here, and the FBI under Obama kind of ignored them. So they're here, and they could go active at any moment. And any event that would be a high casualty event would be devastating to the confidence of the consumer. And obviously, there would be retaliatory strikes by the U.S. against Iran, and that would only escalate this further. So this is a very uncertain time, and I think caution is warranted in your investment portfolio. The fundamentals aren't with you, and the geopolitical risks aren't with you.
So very well said. Which is why a lot of people, and again, I have a highly educated audience, been doing this 36 years. And so, we talk about things that are probably not of interest to the average person. So we tend to attract a very select audience. We know many of them, and we know from working with our precious metals company that many of them have very, very high net worths. So we tend to have a very educated, very affluent audience. So to them,
Yeah.
I don't give financial advice, I give financial opinion, and they can figure out on their own, a lot of them. But pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. You just named all these different headwinds coming at us and all the convergence of events. And really, I think my opinion would be to a lot of them, if they haven't already figured it out, is get in a defensive posture, right? To be happy with your profits. You never go wrong taking profits off the table, right?
So many years ago, when I was working at BlackRock, a headhunter called me, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Ned Johnson of Fidelity. There was an opportunity to work as a portfolio manager on his endowment. I didn't take the job, but I had a wonderful lunch with him. And it was right before the great financial crisis, and we were talking about how bad it was going to get. He saw it, I saw it, and he did say the one thing he said is, "You never go broke taking profits." That was his mantra.
Yeah. Yep. And then a safe haven, obviously, is precious metals. I've been buying precious metals since my early 20s in 1993. So I remember some of my friends laughing at me, making fun of me when I told them what I was doing. They thought I was they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the dollar, fiat currency, or they didn't understand any of it. I think a lot of them do now, but 1993 is when I started doing that. And many people now are rushing into gold. The central banks are rushing into gold like crazy. Obviously, the central banks understand what's coming, as well as some kind of, I guess, tying stable coins, CBDCs, whatever you want to call them, and what country we're talking about, to some kind of hard asset that causes people to have confidence in it again. So we're very bullish on gold. We're very bullish on putting gold into your IRA. Where are you at? I know you were talking $10,000 gold by 2030, right?
Yeah. So when people ask me about gold, I say gold is a long-term investment. You don't want to trade it, and it should be 5 to 10% of your portfolio, depending upon your comfort level. And it should be physical gold. But I can't tell you what the short-term price of gold is going to do, because in the great financial crisis, gold did get sold because there was a liquidity crisis. So, you sold what you could, not what you wanted to, because a lot of the stuff you couldn't sell, it was locked up, or so illiquid you take huge losses. So gold may get hit in this, but we do know a couple things. When this happens, there'll be a response from the Fed and fiscal policy, and they'll turn on the printing machines, and that's why I have a $10,000 gold price target by 2030. That's why the real safe haven is cash, T-bills, or government money market funds. Should have a nice amount of dry powder, depending on your comfort level. And that dry powder is what I call an ability to sleep well at night, and then buy. When Warren Buffett starts buying with his 40% cash hoard, he's going to buy low, and that's why you have cash. It's a defensive position. It's dry powder, and it makes you sleep at night. And then the trick is to get back in when stocks go down 30 to 50%.
All right, let's talk about housing market. Again, I guess that depends on the market you're in. I'm in the Mid-South, outside of Memphis. Housing prices here, went up, no doubt about it, post-COVID, but they didn't go to Arizona or Miami prices, California prices, but they did go up. Now, we have a lot of baby boomers that have their main residence, and then they have a second place. How many of them are going to be in a credit crunch, private credit time bomb, or whatever liquidity problem comes along or losses in the market, how many of them are going to be forced to sell, do you think? If they have it paid off, or most of them are going to be able to weather it, continue to pay for maintenance, insurance, property tax, or a lot of them going to be forced to sell one of those homes? And do you see a time frame on that? And how much does that drop housing on a national average?
Well, housing has been stalling and slowly rolling over. It always starts with rents. New tenant rents started plummeting in the fourth quarter of 2025 when President Trump got elected, because a lot of illegal self-deported, and they were the ones pressuring the rent markets higher. And also, we're starting to find out some of them actually got money from the government to buy homes. So the illegal aliens artificially kept home prices too high. And now that's stopped at the border. There's now chatter of Bessent and Trump going after the money that they receive, the benefits they receive, and that'll cause. It's better than having ICE go after them because they'll self-deport. So if that starts to happen, the housing market could really start to roll over. But it's happening slowly. There's the affordability crisis is real. So we've estimated home prices are 30% too high. So you have the boomers sitting on inventory, refusing to lower prices, and you have millennials who can't afford the homes. So the real estate market's effectively frozen and dead. We have a gap between homes for sale versus homes sold. So there's a buyer's strike. And so some people and some markets are starting to roll over and reality's setting in. I think one of the big catalysts could be an economic recession forces some boomers on the margin to lower their home prices. And some of them that are over levered could get taken out. But in general, it's going to be without a major catalyst. It's going to be a slow decline, and it's going to just kind of keep economic activity at a lull. If we do have a super fast reduction in home prices, right now new homes being built are 9 months inventory, the highest we've had since the great financial crisis. That doesn't bode well for the construction industry because the home builders are starting to pause and cutting prices pretty fast on new stuff. So we have a situation where new home prices are actually lower than existing home prices. That came out recently. That hasn't happened in the longest time. So there's definitely bad fundamentals in the housing market. And housing is not like the stock market. It's slow. But when it starts to roll and gather steam, that's when you gotta be concerned. And right now we have consumers auto delinquencies up and credit card delinquencies up. And when they get stressed, they stop credit cards first, auto loans second, and then third, mortgage payments. And we're starting to see the beginnings of a slight uptick in foreclosures. They're still near 2000. They're still near the lowest levels we've seen, but they're starting to inflect the wrong way. And some analysts that have dug deep into the work think there's going to be a foreclosure wave that starts in the fourth quarter. We'll see what happens.
We have quite a few people in our audience that they like this broadcast because we like hard assets, right? Gold, silver, land, cattle, houses. So we have people in this audience that love rental properties. And some of them on our audience, they go in, they buy at great prices, they find deals, they don't buy unless they find a deal. Then they might go in and upgrade that place and then rent to professionals. They're not renting to just anybody. They rent to a higher clientele that has income, but for whatever reason is not buying. What do you say long term for people that are following that strategy of like, okay, I've got my gold, I got my silver, maybe they have some land somewhere, but they've been buying up single family homes, again, remodeling some of them, upgrading some of them, and then putting high-end tenants in there. What do you say to those folks 10 years, 20 years from now, as far as that cash flow and then the increase of the asset? What is their portfolio going to look like 10, 20 years from now? Particularly if some of them, which I know in this audience have the money, they don't have to mortgage them. They're debt-free companies.
Yeah, so it depends on the individual and their skill level. I've done some personal consulting with these types of people, and a lot of them are smart and they buy well, and it depends on the location. Real estate's always local, location. So if you're good at this, You don't want to be over levered right now because we're going to go into a selling season. You actually want to have a little dry powder so you can buy some of these properties at good prices. And most people I talk to are in a good situation, and they're cash flowing from their current properties. They're not over levered. They don't have speculative Airbnbs or that kind of. The people with the speculative Airbnbs are going to get taken out to the woodshed. But if you're good at this and you're doing it well, you just don't. You kind of want to just sit tight, accumulate money, and then buy low, and then you'll set yourself up for the next 10 years. Because I do think once home prices come down, we'll have a nice recovery when the millennials start to buy homes, and that'll generate an economic boom. Because what we have right now, we have boomers sitting on these properties, and their spending profile is different than a family, a young family formation, which that consumer spends way more and is much better for the economy. So the silver lining is that home prices come down. Some people will be hurt, but long term, it sets us up for a nice recovery on the other side.
So 10 years out, someone's real estate rental portfolio with inflation?
Yeah, it'll be fine. There's going to be a dip. We're hitting the 18-year real estate cycle. All our indicators are that home prices are going lower. But if you're not over levered, you sit tight. Your biggest risk is losing your high-paying tenant because they get fired. But as long as you're pretty sure about who's renting from you, you'll be fine. And
then long term, as far as just keeping up with inflation, we see gold and silver. People can watch those move, but with all this environment, what do you see 10 years out on the appreciation of the average home?
Well, it'll after the dip. So I think it's going to keep up with inflation basically, because once you get it's outperformed inflation during the COVID years because of the illegal immigrants and the Fed buying close to $2 trillion in mortgage-backed securities in the spring of 2020, which inflated home prices. So, once we get the correction, I think you'll keep up with inflation, maybe outperform a little bit.
And what is the rate of inflation? What do you think the real number is? I don't trust these CPI numbers. Do you?
Well, so this is the interesting thing. Housing is 40% of the CPI, and we're predicting that we're going to get a deflation scare. Core inflation is going to come down because inflation and high rates eventually solve this problem, and they throw us into recession, which causes a short disinflation, deflationary scare. Then the Fed comes in and prints on the other side, and then the game begins all over again. So what we think is going to happen is if we get this squall, private credit has problems, the economy contracts, the Fed is going to print like we've never seen before, and then 18 months after they print, inflation will start showing up. There's always a lag. When the COVID bucks were created by the Fed and the Trump administration, or not the Trump, well, Trump was in office then, but Congress, took the Fed printing and then gave it out to people in terms of those loans and goodies. That was direct payment by the government to people. That showed up as inflation under the Biden administration, and then Biden, of course, didn't help it any with the new Green Deal Act, which was very inflationary as well.
So as we wrap here, tell me where you think we are with the new system. Meme coins, cryptocurrency, stable coins, Genesis, or the Genius Act, the other one we're all watching. What's the final one we're watching? The Clarity Act. Where do you see all this going in the next 12 months?
Well, there's definitely an attempt to create stable coins, and because the CBDC was dead on arrival. But it's a backdoor CBDC because, if JP Morgan creates a JP Morgan coin, what I fear is, a Democratic administration coming in and then behind the scenes telling JP Morgan to debank people. So it's a form of control. However, there's also a way. It's a way to fund the government deficit because these stable coins can spread to other countries, and every stable coin will be backed by U.S. Treasury debt. So, it's another way of kicking the can down the road fiscally. And I'm kind of torn because I don't want to see a Great Depression, but I also don't want to see the ability and levers to control the populace.
Let's promote your website there. Here it is, Ed Dowd, Beyond the Narrative, .substack.com, Ed Dowd, Beyond the Narrative, .substack.com. I'm glad to know about this. When did you start this?
3 weeks ago, and I went from 0 subscribers to almost 8,000 in 3 weeks. And it's going well. I'm getting a lot of great feedback. I'm going to communicate a lot through this and I write for the financial layman. I don't want to write 13,000 word essays. I'm trying to keep my posts between 800 and 1,200 words, and trying to really, communicate as effectively as possible and not speak to the financial professional. I'm trying to make it so that, someone who's not financially savvy can understand. Also, we have our economic research at financetechnologies.com with a PH. And I have a personal website, eddowd.com, where you can book consulting. And then I'm on X at Dowd Edward.
Well, you're a busy guy. Logan, get me signed up for his Substack, will you please? Now, if they wanted to find all this at one place, where do you suggest they go? Just eddowd.com, and then they can find everything from there?
Yeah, everything is there. And if you want our economic, or if you're a high net worth individual and you want a deep dive in the U.S. economy and the Chinese economy, financetechnologies.com, you can purchase our reports there.
Good. And finally, we are seeing a lot of our audience. I get reports from Swiss America that we've been working with for 18 years. A lot of our audience are very active right now. I don't know what other people are doing, but our guys are very busy, because so much of our audience is moving 100,000, 200,000, 400,000 into their gold into their IRA. They're either putting gold into their IRA and having it put into a depository in Delaware, or some of them are buying and taking physical custody. Is it because of education? Because they're listening to interviews like this, education? Why do you think our guys are all of a sudden, they can't answer the phones fast enough with people putting gold in their IRA?
Yeah, this has been a big trend. There's a lot of people who are waking up to the fiscal and monetary situation. And I think COVID kind of woke a lot of people up. Most of the people I talked to found me during COVID, and then now they're seeking financial advice, which I don't really give, I give more like consulting. I talk about what you should be thinking about, but I don't tell them what to do. I just kind of guide them. And a lot of them already come to me and they already have physical gold. And some of them have them on their own properties, which I tell them, if you do have gold on your own property, don't tell anybody that you have that, and don't even tell your children.
Wow. But you do believe a lot of them are making the right move, putting gold into their IRA?
Yeah, a portion. Again, you don't want. There was one gentleman who came to me who was 70% gold, and I said that was a little extreme.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a little extreme. EdDowd.com, or is it Edward Dowd? Which one is it?
It's EdDowd.com.
Hey, there it is on the screen. EdDowd.com. EdDowd.com. There you can find out about his new Substack, which is Ed Dowd, Beyond the Narrative.substack.com. EdDowd.com will get you to it. You'll find out about his his consulting. You can work with him, and he'll lead and guide you, as you just heard. EdDowd.com. You'll find it all. We enjoy our visits, and we look forward to having you back on, maybe say in another 4 weeks.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think the next 6 months are going to be very full of news events, and the financial markets are going to get more volatile. So I think coming on your show a little more often than I have in the past is probably prudent, because I think a lot's going to happen in the next 6 months. I agree.
And we sure love having you on. So thank you for making yourself available.
Thank you, Brandon. Good to be here.
You too, my friend. EdDowd.com. We'll be right back, guys.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial scale systems to whole house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. And here's the best part. It installs in just 15 minutes. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water, including you, including your family. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net. And discover what truly clean water can do for your health.
All right, guys, before we bring on Dan Eastman, I want to make sure you go to worldviewgold.com. Worldviewgold.com. Look, you just heard everything that Ed said. Worldview Gold. Hello, Dolly. Worldview Gold. How you doing, sweetheart? I love it when you come to visit. Yeah, I love it. Worldviewgold.com. Worldview. Look at you. You're kind of gold. You're kind of gold. You could be us. You could be the mascot for Worldview Gold because you're kind of a gold color. Worldviewgold.com. Worldview. You want to come on this side now? Are you afraid of the eagle? You're not so sure about that eagle, are you? Yeah. Yeah, it's the eagle. Yeah, you're a little afraid of it last night. You're barking at it. Not so much tonight. Worldviewgold.com. Worldviewgold.com. Get your free no obligation packet, folks. Find out how to put gold into your IRA. I have been working with Swiss America, folks, for 18 years. So again, there's no risk here just to get a free packet of information and do your own due diligence. You can either fill out the form at worldviewgold.com, just click more information, fill out the form, and it'll be on its way to you. Worldviewgold.com or that number you see on the screen, 1-877-864-1072, 1-877-864-1072. Let's see what Dan Eastman thinks of all this. Joining me now is none other than Professor Dan Eastman. Well, you just saw my interview with Ed Dowd. Now let's go to an economics professor and a regular talk show host here on Worldview Tube each and every day at 11:30 Central. I got it right. 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern Standard. I love these graphics, and there it is again. The private credit time bomb. I sent some of this over to Dan and said, I want you to come on and talk about this because there are a lot of people that could be on the verge of losing an awful lot of their retirement, and time is not on their side to wait for it to come back. He joins us now. Professor, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Always great to see you.
You too, my friend. Let's talk about this private credit time bomb. We just had on Ed Dowd, and he was explaining, and he's the one really lifting up a shout on this. Private credit firms, they raise the capital from investors. They make loans to middle market companies, real estate, other assets, and then they sell it off to insurance companies, 401ks, retirements, pensions, etc. It's not very liquid. There's not a lot of oversight. And there's the valuations. I believe the valuations, to be honest with you. And then we find when people want to try to start pulling some of their money out, they're told, we'll give you 5%. So what is your concern about the private credit time bomb, and particularly with the average mom and pop that's watching tonight when it comes to their pension or 401k? Or even their bank, because some of their banks are tied to some of this with lines of credit and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap, or as Winston Churchill used to say, there's a bit of a distance between the cup and the lip on this one, between the retail investors and what's happening in private credit and private equity. When you go back to 2007 and 2008, we had a very interesting banking problem in the United States. It was a banking and financial crisis, and it was based on this idea that you could collateralize mortgages. You could take mortgages and bundle them together and sell them as units in a big partnership to investors, and that would create a liquid market in mortgages. But the problem back in 2007, 2008 is that the default rate wasn't being calculated properly. And as we hit an economic bump, people started defaulting more and more on their mortgages. And when they were all aggregated into this great big partnership and everybody had shares in this thing, nobody knew what the risk was. So in the way the banking industry works, if you hold interests in these types of partnerships on your balance sheet, you have to market to market. And if the market can't be priced, the price is zero. And therefore, the whole banking industry went into turmoil. The Federal Reserve had to step in with inventing quantitative easing to buy these bonds and park them on the balance sheet of the Fed, put new money into the banks. And of course, we saved the banks and everything went on. When that whole thing happened, the idea of private credit became a real thing, because if you go to a bank for a loan or you go to a bond house and you want to issue debt with bonds, there's all sorts of underwriting standards, and it's very, very complicated, and it's very difficult, a lot of disclosure. And in order to circumvent that, the private credit market emerged, where you can legally make a loan to somebody and draft up a contract. And it's a private contract between two parties, and it's outside of the purview of the regulators. So the whole private credit industry emerged from this phenomenon that you can avoid all the disclosures at the SEC, you can avoid all the problems with the bank regulators, and you can just have private contracts. So, and of course, when you do that, you go out to very large institutional investors. These aren't necessarily retail mom and pop type investors. These are big companies like pension funds, life insurance, big banks, and they will put private money into a private pool, and the pool acts just like a bank. They'll make you a loan, but it's not regulated. It's outside of the system. Well, of course, those privately unregulated credit lenders take more risk, and that's why the portfolios pay higher interest than the banks and other regulated entities. So what you've seen evolve into the trillions of dollars is a shadow, completely legal, but a shadow lending system that is private credit. So if you're a small business, medium-sized business, you can go to the bank and you go through all the due diligence. It's a real process. Or you can go to your friendly credit lender and they'll lend you the money at a higher interest rate, but you can avoid all that hassle of being rejected at the bank. So this is all grown. Now, the problem is these are not liquid assets. If you take a bunch of loans, private loans made to businesses, and you put them in a pool, and then you sell interest in the pool to the life insurance companies and the mutual funds and everybody else, there's no regulation involved in that, and it's much higher risk. And if you read the contract, it will very clearly state these are not liquid assets. If you put money into this partnership and we lend it out on a 10-year note to some business or a 5-year note, you can't just call and redeem. There are maybe 5% redemption, and there are all sorts of contractual limits on your ability to cash out, get your cash out of this pool of loans. They're not mortgages, they're loans. Well, of course, as loans become riskier and the economy, again, we're not living in the most robust economy for small business. The risk profile of these portfolios has changed rather dramatically. And of course, the insurance companies and the mutual fund companies, all these people who are investors in these pools, they want their money back. They don't want this thing to crater and they lose their investment. So they're pounding the ending to get their money back, which is outside of the parameters of the contract they signed when they entered into that arrangement. And that's what's creating the noise in the marketplace. So as these pools deteriorate, the big guys can't get their money out, and the unit interest that they have is likely declining in value, although it's not traded, there's no market pricing, but it's declining in value because of the increase in defaults and the increase in risk. And therefore, these are grossly illiquid securities, and the big guys are trying to get their money out, and they can't. And that's why we're hearing this. And what happens when the big guys take a loss on these private credit pools? Well, if it's a life insurance company, then they didn't make as much money. It puts the policyholders at risk. If it's your 401k or your mutual fund or your pension fund, big pension fund, well, it puts those pension and 401k and IRA dollars at risk. And that becomes a real problem. And that's where it starts to touch Main Street investors. So you've got a 401k plan through your employer and you're invested in them. They give you a whole menu of options. Which fund do you want to be in? You pick a few and you're in it. And then you find out that fund is heavily laden with private credit. and the private credit is deteriorating, well, that fund drops in net asset value, and that's what really hurts the public. So it's all outside of the regulatory mechanisms. The Securities and Exchange Commission regulates mutual funds, and which would be, like a bond fund is that type thing. The SEC is absent from this. Of course, the bank regulators, and there's many. There's the FDIC, there's the Federal Reserve. All of them are outside of this private credit investment pool, and that's what's creating the risk. So the big question is, what do the big guys do? Well, they're big guys. They're mutual funds, they're pension funds, they're insurance companies. They call their lobbyists and go to Washington and say, hey, we've got to have the United States Treasury bail this out or everybody's going to lose money. And that's exactly what happened in 2007 and 2008. The solution to the deteriorating mortgage credit obligations was to have the Federal Reserve step in and buy them and take them on their balance sheet and pump new money into the banks so the banks didn't collapse. Well, it took the Federal Reserve years to be able to unload those assets that they purchased, and some of them actually matured out. But that was the stopgap that opened the barn door to the quantitative easing that we see today, which is now normal. They step into the market and they buy something to manipulate the price or the interest rate, which is their monetary policy, and that's what they do. So we're at a situation with this private credit where the risk burden has shifted to the big players who are very sophisticated players. These are not mom and pop investors, but they don't want to take the loss. So where do they go? They go to Washington, get bailed out, right? So that's what we're looking at with private credit. And that's why I think a lot of people are nervous, because if your IRA or your 401k or your bank, let's say your bank has a bunch of this private credit, which is problematic because they're regulated. But let's just say it's a mutual fund or a money fund, and they're sitting on a lot of private credit assets, and they go to zero or they substantially devolve in value. That's going to hurt retail investors in a big way. So that's what's going on in that sector.
So obviously people need to be paying attention, because we're going to see, Ed Dowd says that 2008 will look like a walk in the park compared to what's coming. You agree?
Well, it's the volume of private credit. It's such a hassle to go to a bank and apply for a loan. You get the loan committee and they turn you down. These guys are handing, like the mortgage guys were handing out money in the early 2000s.
Because the return is higher. Because return is higher, and Wall Street makes
You're
better
always
money.
chasing yield. Always chasing yield. So if you can buy into this credit pool and it's paying 13%, or you can go to the bank and you put your money in for 0.5%, you're going to take the higher yield. And that's what all institutional money does. It chases yield. So they offer higher yield and then they take it. But with higher yield comes higher risk. That's the whole nature of interest. And I think he's right. If this thing blows, they will immediately run to Washington and say, you've got to do something. And, there's the bailout. I mean, it's just that moral risk, that moral risk that has been a constant problem.
But that's assuming
the federal government that can bail the sector.
But that's assuming that you don't have people losing their shirt because they can't get to liquidity to get their money out because it's not liquid. And they're sitting there. Do we have the clip again, Logan, from the congressman in Pennsylvania? You're sitting there like in 2008, and people are trying to get their money out of these assets, and they can't while the system's collapsing.
Right.
That's a real threat.
That's the liquidity issue. We're very used to putting our money in our checking account, demand deposits, and you get your money right back. You put $1 in, you can take $1 right out. But if you go to your local bank and you open a savings account and you read the fine print, which nobody does, they have 90 days to give you your savings account money back. And Americans just tend to think that I put my money in and I get it back. But that's not the contractual obligation that they agreed to at the time they put the money. And keep in mind, the investors in these pools are very sophisticated players. These are not retail people. You would have a very difficult time finding a mutual fund that deals with private credit. And I'm sure there's some out there. But for the vast majority of Americans, you're trusting your money manager to find the right investments. And some of the money went into an entity that had private credit risk. And if the liquidity dries up, liquidate, that's going to affect the net asset value of your mutual fund share. And that's what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Watch this clip from 2008. Here we go.
On Thursday at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the Federal Reserve noticed a tremendous drawdown of money market accounts in the United States to the tune of $550 billion was being drawn out in a matter of an hour or two. The Treasury opened up its window to help. They pumped $105 billion in the system and quickly realized that they could not stem the tide. We were having an electronic run on the banks. They decided to close the operation, close down the money accounts, and announce a guarantee of $250,000 per account so there wouldn't be further panic out there. And that's what actually happened. If they had not done that, their estimation was that by 2 o'clock that afternoon, $5.5 trillion would have been drawn out of the money market system of the United States, would have collapsed the entire economy of the United States, and within 24 hours, the world economy would have collapsed. Now, we talked at that time about what would happen if that happened. It would have been the end of our economic system and our political system as we know it. And that's why, when they made the point, we've got to act and do things quickly, we did.
There you go. We got to act quickly. So there's your digital run right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the digital bank run in 2007. And the reason being that many banks will buy federal treasury bonds because of the full faith and credit of the United States. It's the risk-free asset. It comes in the front door. The treasurer of the bank will buy federal bonds on their balance sheet, safe as safe can be. Then all of a sudden, these collateralized mortgage obligations showed up, and they're paying a higher rate of interest than the T-bills and the T-bonds were. So the treasuries at the banks started to load up on the collateralized loan obligations, because what's more secure than a mortgage? Nobody's going to default on their house. That was the problem. And the banks had so many of these collateralized mortgage obligations on their books that have you ever watched the movie? I'm blanking on the name of the movie. It was really great, talking about how this one figured out that the default rate was inaccurate and it was going up. And when that information came out, nobody wanted collateral.
Margin call, was that margin call, guys?
It might. I can't remember. It was kind of an obscure analyst. They wrote a book, and anyway, the point is, all of these banks were holding collateralized mortgage obligations, and the bank rules say if there's no market price, you mark it to zero. When they marked it to zero, their balance sheets shrunk dramatically, even though there's still asset value in the bonds. But the balance sheets shrunk, and they went way below their reserve ratios, and that's what triggered the panic. So the American public heard that, race over to the ATM, and you're trying to get as many cash, Federal Reserve notes, $100 bills, $20 bills as you can get, the stuff in the sock drawer, because nobody was sure that the banks weren't going to collapse. And that's why the federal government stepped in. And that clip's a little wrong. It wasn't the U.S. Treasury that opened the window. It was the Federal Reserve that opened the window, bought those bonds in, and put fresh money into the bank. And of course, fresh money is the values of the face value, and saved the day. And that did save the American banking system from collapse. And now today, the new regulations is you have to have a more balanced portfolio of bank assets. You can't be heavily overweighted in mortgage-backed securities or anything other than Federal Reserve or federal government debt. Of course, that's eternal. So it's an interesting problem, and I think I don't see the banking industry being at risk, because the banking industry is outside of the private lending industry. I mean, they compete. They really do compete.
All right. Thank you, as always, Dan. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for having me on, Brandon.
All right, guys, that's our broadcast for tonight. You appreciate how we're doing? Now, we're going to put this interview with Mr. Morris Tan online at worldviewtube.com. We're going to put it on our various Facebook posts. We're going to cut it up into clips and at all of our social media. So please go to worldviewtube.com. Get this interview. We put it up there earlier today because we need it going everywhere right away. We're going to keep you posted on this. This isn't just one show. We are committed to following this story through. I'm texting with Mr. Tan, and we're going to follow through on this. We need to get this wonderful Christian man home to his family safe and sound. And we need to be praying for the people of South Korea as well. So please go to worldviewtube.com, get that interview, and spread it everywhere, the URL. Folks, do you appreciate what we're doing? We need your support. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. As the music plays, please consider going right now to worldviewfoundation.com and making a contribution of any size. Help us continue to push out Christian worldview programming, news, information through the lens of a biblical worldview. Don't forget, we also have our church. Our foundation is our church. And I bring you every Sunday night my Bible teaching. Now and then the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 8, verse 1. So again, thank you for your support to keep us pushing out free Christian worldview ministry programming, worldviewfoundation.com. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And we're going to be joined today by Dr. Andy Woods. Normally he's with us on Fridays, but he will be gone on Friday. We don't want to miss a chance to chat with the good doctor, so he's going to join us here in just one moment. Tonight on Brannon House Live, I want to give you guys a little heads up here because we are going to be having a conversation that, I think, again, we're going to be ahead of the trends. That's what we've done here consistently over and over again. I have an email I want to read to you here. I'll find it after we get going here, from a gentleman who has been in law enforcement for years. And he wanted to say that what I was talking about last week with the deficit of good police officers and recruits was so spot on. And he went on to add more to it. And as you know, that's something we were warning about probably 12, 15 years ago, a long time ago. Warning. Don't respect someone just because they're wearing a uniform, military or police, because you're going to see a transformation in law enforcement. You're going to see a transformation in the U.S. military. How did I know that? Because I know what the ideas and agenda are, what those agendas are by the left, by the Marxists, by the Islamists, by the globalists. I know history. It doesn't repeat itself, as one man said, but it rhymes. So it wasn't hard to predict that trend. Go back to my book, third book in 1995, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk. I told you we would have vaccine tracking systems, that those systems would be used to penalize and to target conservatives, Christians. I told you we were headed toward corporate fascism, the merging of big government and big business. And I went into great detail, not just a paragraph, great detail. And what do we see today? Big government, big business. Well, I say all that because that's what we try to do. Now, if someone says one of our goals here is to teach you worldview, but never to teach you how to apply it to life or to understand the times and to prepare for what's coming, then isn't it just academic?